back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 70 of Two Goalies, One Mike. I'm Johnny Cullen, joined alongside Duane Stenell as always, and we are pleased to be joined by a long-time coming guest, Dom Luszczyszyn. Hope I didn't butcher that too bad. Dom, how you doing today, buddy? Thanks for coming on.
Not too bad. It's been a long time coming, as Duane has been in my DMs for months on end.
Yeah, I've been sliding in those DMs for a while, but the one time you canceled on me, I think I forget what it was, and then I had to cancel on you, so we're both to blame here. But a long time coming. Special guest Dom, the second best Dom in the room. Well, not in the room right now, but currently the other Dom is on a walk, so. Butcher that, but I appreciate you coming on with us, man. Again, long time coming. I really do appreciate your work. Actually, when I do a lot of my own writing, I kind of refer to a lot of your content when I do my own stuff for Trainwreck Sports. You amongst a few other athletic writers. So I do appreciate the work you do and the time you put in, especially when it comes to this time of year.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem, man.
I want to start this right off. For those that don't know, Dom has been at the heart, if not like the founder of I know there was those that came before you of joining analytics into the game of hockey. And you always have the old school guys that'll say, "Wow, you got to pass the eye test." Well, listen, my opinion is that, if we can make the game better, if we can make the scouting better, if we can make the product better, then why not use every tool available to us? It's got to be frustrating, or in the early years for you fighting that battle, and I'm sure you still get that. But can you tell us a little bit about how you got into the analytics side of hockey? And then, part two of that question would be about, your new system. It's pronounced GameStar, GameStat?
GameScore.
Wow, I fucked that up bad. No, but just how you got into it and maybe some of the humps along the way that you've had to, the hurdles along the way you've had to pass by, because you know who I'm talking about. There's certain people out there that say, analytics have no place in hockey. And I think that's such an arrogant, ignorant take because there is a place for it. And it's only going to make the game better.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure what year exactly I started, but it came from a want to bet on hockey, and I figured I could use math to do that. And that's sort of where it all began. I started reading about all the other people already doing stuff within the game, and I was learning from them and started doing my own thing. And it basically all just came from wanting to make money off of hockey and knowing that just picking things at random probably wasn't going to work, and math was the way to go. So I started building some models, and that's where I came across GameScore, which I stole from basketball. I think it was around the time that LeBron James won his championship with Cleveland, and I was just obsessed with reading everything about it. And I stumbled on this stat for basketball, and I thought we should have something like this for hockey. So I created it, and I've been tweaking it ever since, and here we are now, I guess.
So I'm sorry, Cully. I just want to come. I know I kind of came into analytics over the last 2 years, really kind of diving into it and trying to understand it more, because I'm a little bit older than you guys. I came from an age where, when I playing and watching hockey, that where analytics weren't as prevalent then, obviously, as it is today, if they were prevalent at all back then.
You're fucking 3 years older than me.
Yeah, but.
I'm just fucking with you. Continue.
All right. Well, it's a grind. Like, for somebody like me 2 years ago who doesn't really understand it, I just want to tell our listeners who were like me 2 years ago, analytics, to understand it, it's very difficult. The different metrics that are involved with it. So to be like a guy like Dom who really dives deep into it and finds out and really brings out all the intricacies, if that maybe it's a lack of a better word, is the ability to do what you do on a daily basis, and the grind you go through, especially throughout not just the hockey, it's just all year round. I give you so much so many kudos for doing that, because sometimes like my first couple times trying to understand it, it was like looking at hieroglyphics. It was like I have no clue what I'm looking at. Now I've gone from ignorant to novice to slightly above novice right now, but I'm starting to get there. But just for those listeners who don't understand what this guy does, he literally just every aspect of the game, every metric, he brings it out, and the way he articulates it, whether he's talking about it or he's writing about it. Personally, again, he's one of my favorite writers to go back and refer to when it comes to this stuff. Guy is unbelievable. So, Dom, just for our listeners who just don't really understand.
Couple clicks.
Yeah. Again, I'm not like I said, I'm not trying to pump your tires too much, Dom, but it really is a difficult thing to just understand, even as a novice. But to get to the level where you're at, it's just kudos to you, man.
I appreciate that. I think that is my main goal, because I didn't study stats or math in university. I studied journalism, and that's where I'm coming from, where if your audience doesn't understand what you're talking about, then what you're talking about doesn't matter. So I try to make it as accessible as possible, and try to make it appealing to not just other analytics savvy people, but also newcomers who may not understand. And I try to be open and transparent about things, and try to be available to people who do want to learn about this side of the game. And everyone started at the place where they didn't understand analytics and thought it was silly or fad. And it does take some time to get to the point of acceptance. And it doesn't help if they're learning that from someone who is condescending or arrogant about it and is a jerk, when it's more helpful to have patience and understanding and try to just show them the utility of it. And I know I can sometimes come across that way, dealing with thousands of people. Sometimes some of them are jerks to you. So it's hard, but I try my best to give the same respect back that people give me. And as long as people are respectful in their questions and it seems like they genuinely want to understand, then I try to do my best to guide them, because I know not everyone understands numbers as well as some other people already do.
Well, and I think to piggyback off that, one thing Duane said is that your ability to kind of involve and have analytics be a part of your writing and your articles, and I don't want to say layman's terms, but in a way that a non-analytics expert can be able to break that down. Sarah Sivian jokes about it all the time, right? On how she uses your charts and whatnot, and I find that hilarious. A couple clicks for Sarah, friend of the program. Hope to get her on one day. But going back to it. If you could, for some of our older listeners or even the younger kids that listen to the show, how would you explain how Corsi works in a nutshell, and then leading into what GameScore does? And I know basically Corsi tracks, correct me if I'm wrong, the amount of shots generated for versus against in your shift. And that goes into a whole bunch of different sub-levels. Am I on the right track?
Yeah. So basically, it's the same idea as plus minus, except we understand that goals are very infrequent events in hockey. So there's not that many of them.
Sorry to cut you off. Plus minus is one of the worst stats in all of hockey.
Yeah. So the goal is to make it more useful, because we do want to know how players perform at 5-on-5, and plus minus gives you goals for, goals against, and that isn't as helpful because there's just not that many of those events. And plus minus also adds a bunch of bullshit on top of that, like shorthanded
empty
goals
netters.
For, empty netters, all that stuff. So Corsi is just 5-on-5, and it's all shot attempts. So rather than 40 goals for, 40 goals against in a year, you're looking at like 500 to 1,000 maybe over a whole year. So it just increases things, and looks at shots missed, and block shots whenever a player is on the ice. There's ways to like transform that to make it more individualistic. So you can look at how a player does when he's on the ice versus on the bench. So if a team,
is that where expected goals comes from when they talk about like the trading? Or I'm sorry to get you off track.
expected goals is just another extension of Corsi. So the main argument against it at the time was, okay, well, that treats all shots as equal when we know that's not true. So expected goals looks at the probability of a shot attempt going in and then assigns that value to the shot attempt and adds it all together.
Maybe I was thinking about in the charts when you're looking at free agents, the adjusted goals. Like I'm not getting it right, but like the goals that individual player would account for, whether it's a minus or negative, positive or negative. You know what I'm talking about? What's that called?
War?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm learning so much right now. I'm learning. Some stuff I already knew. I love it.
No, I found that fascinating because when you're looking at free agents, you've done a ton of charts with, what's it, runs above replacement or whatever it is. I don't know what it stands for. But I think that's fascinating that you guys have been able to use that the mathematics and be able to deliver that stat. And we saw, Dom, the teams that integrated analytics early had success. One of the reasons Vegas had success right away, they had a great analytics department, right from the start. And a couple teams were late to the party. And I'd like to think that every NHL team has an analytics department. Some have more invested in others, and I think that shows. And I'm not going to name any names to piss anybody off. But we're in a market that's very understaffed. Duane, me and you talked about that, right? And I think the Sabres could do more there. But going back to your explanation, a little bit about game score and how that affects and how that translates to hockey. Is it pretty much using Corsi and War and that, or is there way more to it? Am I way off?
So there's a lot to unpack there, but I'll start with Buffalo actually making a very good hire, Sam Ventura from the Pittsburgh Penguins, and he was part of the first group that made a war stat for hockey when he was with War on Ice with Alex Mandraki and AC Thomas, and they made a war stat, and that was sort of also what inspired game score as well, because one of my first models was making a projection based off of that. And once all three of them got hired by NHL teams, it's like, okay, well, we had a war stat for 1 year. Now we're back to square one. And I made something that was sort of simple, and it used Corsi at the time. It now uses expected goals, but basically the idea was to combine box score stats with those on-ice stats. So sort of bridge the gap between the normal stats like goals, assists, shots, block shots, face-offs, penalties, and add Corsi and 5-on-5 goal differential and sort of blend it together to create a player value rating. And the idea was that this score would help decide which players were good in a specific game. But if a player was good over a specific game and over a specific period of time, then it's a good measure of how good that player was during a season. So that sort of evolved into a war-like metric. And I know there's a few other people out there who do have their own war metrics, and game score is similar in that vein. It's not nearly as complex, but it's the same general principle.
Well, I appreciate you breaking that down.
I do too.
I know there's a ton of our listeners that don't fully understand it, but like Duane said, once I became a little bit more involved, it only helped me understand it more and more. One last question, then Duane, I'll give it all to you. When I teach my goalies, I talk about the Royal Road, right? That if you draw, and for our listeners, if you draw a line from the center of one net all the way down the ice to the center of the other net, that's the Royal Road. And I think it was maybe I want to say Mike McKenna. No, it was
Steve Allicat.
What's that?
Stephen Valiquette?
Yep, Stephen Valiquette came up with that awesome article that looked at it, and it was fascinating. I want to say it was something like 80% or some very high number of goals scored in the NHL in that given season within 5 seconds or 3 seconds had either crossed the Royal Road with a pass or with a player skating by. And that, to me, was when it jumped out that said, hey, as a goalie, I can use this.
Mm-hmm.
And I can implement it not only into my game, but into my teaching. And he did a hell of a job with that. Is Royal Road involved in anything that you guys do analytically?
No. And that is one of the current flaws with expected goals is that there's no passing data. So you don't know what happens before a shot happens. You just know the location and the angle, and you can infer whether it was off the rush or a rebound. But there's nothing about if there was a pass before the shot and where that pass came from. So that's one of the biggest issues with expected goals right now. And there's private models from teams because teams have access to that kind of data where there'll be differences and discrepancies from the public models. The way I combat that is I use goals because goals happened and they give some signal as to the difference between an expected goal and ones that actually went in. And I think that can sort of bridge the gap between having that row data and not having it.
Now, we mentioned earlier, the hire with Sam Ventura, and obviously it couldn't have come at a better time. Obviously we know everything that's going down here in Buffalo. It's an absolute disaster.
Except the Ristolainen trade. Great article, Dom.
Which, yeah, that is funny. I mean, we did an episode immediately after that. Well, we did a live stream episode right after that, just because, we just wanted to laugh at Philadelphia for giving up what they gave up for Ristolainen. Because I don't need to be an analytics guru to know that his analytics are horrible. And everything about him says he's not worth a first, a second, and a rostered player, even if their metrics are very similar. But Kevin Adams got a first, a second, first in this year's draft, a second in next year's, and just I think it was Robert Hagg, who, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but from the looks of it, I think he might even be more of a defensive defenseman than Ristolainen was, because in his own end, even just using the eye test, you get to see that one of his biggest issues for me was he would never just make the simple play. He always made it much harder on himself. And that was his biggest issue for me. Yeah, he can hit. Yeah, he's tough in front of the net. But I don't know what? A lot of those times where he was tough in front of the net, the puck was already in the back of our net.
Yeah.
So, you can be as tough all as you want, when the puck's already in the back of the net. Nobody cares. They scored. They put a point up on the board. But you got that deal done, which was phenomenal. Obviously, the return for Sam Reinhart wasn't as sexy as you hoped it would be. From what I've gathered from talking to a lot of people, I guess, he was more valued as a winger than he was a center, even though he played most of last season and had potentially, in my opinion, his best season as a Sabre, playing most of it at center. The right-handed defenseman was much more valued this year than a scoring winger. But even before that, bringing in a guy like Sam Ventura before this draft was so clutch and so key. And you saw some massive differences in the way they drafted this year. They kind of went off the board and took an Isaac Rosine with the 14th overall pick, technically 13, with Arizona's forfeited pick. And then they really went hard at the Russians, Prokhor, Poltapov, I'm sorry if I'm butchering these names, Alexander Kisakov, and then Steven Sardinian. I'm just going to call him the Sardine. 3 Russians in a row. And, that's something we haven't drafted a Russian since 2016. Judging from the people I've talked to, Sam Ventura had a lot to do with that. How clutch was it to bring a guy like him? I know you spoke on him before, but clutch like him to bring in such an important draft, drafting first overall and having the amount of picks we had in this draft.
I think it's huge. I wrote an article with John Vogel last week about how Buffalo continues to fuck up the draft. I know some people have suggested it's development more than drafting. Whatever it is, it's the reason they're still here a decade later at the bottom of the league.
Yep.
They have had so much value in terms of draft picks, and they've completely squandered it, or else they would be a playoff team by now. That's just how it works. That's how it's worked for so many other teams. And for them, it's just the difference between them and a contending team is that they do not hit on their draft picks.
Nope.
And having a guy like Sam Ventura helps a lot because he has a sharp mind. He is probably one of the sharpest minds in hockey just based on what he showed in the public sphere. And I don't know how much Buffalo was listening to their analytics staff before, but if they're bringing him in, I'm sure his voice will be heard and it'll be a priority. And I think he was a big reason why Pittsburgh had so much success over the past 5 years when everyone thought they were always going to decline. This is the year they wouldn't make the playoffs, all that other stuff. And they kept finding ways. And I think he was probably a big part of that. And I don't doubt that the minute he stepped into the Buffalo offices, he's like, get rid of Ristolainen. Just
you have to imagine.
Yeah.
I love the first line of your article. It's finally a win for Buffalo, a massive win for Buffalo. The common thread throughout the Sabres struggles to get out of the basement over the last decade has been Ristolainen. The difference between every player's numbers with him on the ice and on the bench is absolutely staggering, and that's perfectly encapsulated by the team's franchise player, Jack Eichel, who's also on his way out. Over the last 3 seasons, Eichel has spent nearly 1,000 minutes with Ristolainen, and in that time has a 46% goal rate. It's 55 without him. By expected goals, RAPM, a regression version of expected goals that takes into account teammates and competition. Ristolainen's effect is in the 22nd worst among all defenders and the 3rd worst by goals. On a consistently bad Sabres team, Ristolainen has always been the anchor dragging everyone down.
Oh my God!
Well written, Dom. Well written, but like if you could take that Ristolainen and a lack of our success into a nutshell, it's that fucking paragraph. Well written, well done. Every Sabres fan should read that article.
I gotta see if I can find a picture of it. A buddy of mine sent. Let me see. Yeah, I'm gonna upload this in a second. I'll read it out. But right after he got traded, somebody posted this tweet. He goes, "Never forget when I saw Rasmus Ristolainen in Rec Room downtown and said, 'Go Sabres,' and he replied, 'We suck. Go Bills. Best of luck, bud.'"
Oh shit! That is such a risky thing. Looking like Ivan Drago, goal save. No, we suck. Bill's Mafia.
That actually is kind of funny. I respect Ristolainen for that. That's self-awareness. I tweeted
and knowing that you're part of the problem.
Yeah. I tweet a lot about Ristolainen, obviously after he got traded, and I have people saying that something about the eye test or some other shit, and I've watched him play, and this has been going back a while. I remember at the World Cup, like he was this highly touted prospect.
The World Cup? Are you talking about the World Juniors?
No, the World Cup. He was on the Finnish team.
Wow.
Yeah, and I remember I was there live for a few games, and he looked like shit. I'm like, what are you guys talking about with this? Like, he's big, obviously, but like,
boots.
He has no idea what's going on out there, and that
lowest IQ player on the ice at all times. Lowest.
Like he's not a smart player at all, and that is something that feels very noticeable when you watch him, and the analytics confirm it. But you still get people saying he looks great out there, and that's how you get him going for a first and a second. And I still just don't.
I don't understand it. I get the value of a right-handed defenseman. I understand it because they always say that. Sometimes it's easier to get a right-handed defenseman or a left-handed. Sometimes you're able to get. If I'm wording this incorrectly, you can get a left-handed defenseman sometimes to play the right side more easily than the other way around. I know Dahlin. I think Dahlin did that before he made the jump to the NHL. But again, man, like even if the value is there for a right-handed defenseman, like what do you like? I can't tell you the number of times where he had the easy play up the boards. Keep it like coaching up, Cully knows this is coaching our lives. The acronym KISS, keep it simple, stupid. And he does the opposite every single time. Like, I'm going to carry the puck up and try and split these two players rather than just go up the boards to my winger. He consistently would never, ever make the simple play. And that's one of the things I love most about Owen Power's game was he didn't put himself in those, pressure situations where he backed himself into a corner the past year and previous to that with Chicago Steel. He trusted in his forwards to carry the puck out if he couldn't, and he wasn't afraid to go high and up the boards if he felt like he was under pressure. And
that's something glassing out. And I know we're not trying to push away possession, but wrist the line and consistently, to your point, Duane, force pucks through the middle of the ice. And led to turnovers. Listen, if you're going to turn the puck over, turn it over in their end or at the far blue. Don't turn it over in the middle of your own end. And Ristolainen consistently did that. And Dom, I know that you haven't seen every single Sabres game, but it's something that we've lived through. And a lot of people, the Ristolainen defenders, which are very few, they said, well, the man plays with jam. Listen, you can play with jam. Cal McCarr plays with jam, right? Owen Power plays with jam. You can play with jam without having like the IQ of a Cully or a Duane. I hate to say it, but it's just a well-written article about that. I think every Sabres fan should check it out. Sabres grade A+, Flyers grade F-. Let me ask you this on the flip side of it. What is Brian Burke and is it Chuck Fletcher? No.
Ron Hextall.
Ron Hextall. What are they thinking?
He's big. He's got jam. And they probably think that playing with Travis Sanheim on a second pair and not getting tough minutes, he'll be better. And he probably will be. He probably won't be as bad as he was on the Sabres, but the enormous gap between his results and his usage, like, it just doesn't cover it. He's not going to be suddenly good on the second pair unless he takes a massive leap. And maybe he also needed a change of scenery. He's been in Buffalo on this bad team, and although part of the reason they're bad has been because of him, I'm sure it's still weighed on him, and there is a chance he can be what the Flyers need if the fit is right. I think Burke has generally been good at finding quality players, but Ristolainen seems like a poor man's Dion Phaneuf, and that's not a good thing for Philadelphia.
Now, hey, I think that, and you mentioned them getting Ryan Ellis. I play with Ellie. I play with him and Petro. Duane, shut up. Don't even mention it. He says
a yearbook away.
So Ryan Ellis was the best defenseman I've ever played with, not just because he scored 50 goals in the OHL, last player to do it, not a big deal. Not just because he was able to defend and play below the dots for being a little guy, but just his IQ, his ability to knock down pucks into blue line, chips past him, but he was always in the right spot, and I'm happy to see the Flyers get him. Maybe that insulates them a little bit from this Risto trade.
Yeah,
but I do agree with you that
a big deal for them.
Risto definitely, needed a change of scenery. Is that going to turn him into a different player? No. I'm happy to get him off the books. And here's the interesting thing. I just finished watching Owen Power on the Instigators, and he's backed off his comment a little bit about going back to school next year. And I think maybe, tell me if I'm wrong, does having that right hand, first pair spot open up have anything to do with that, guys? You tell me. By the way, I wore the wrong shirt. This was supposed to be worn last episode with Owen Power.
Before you answer, Dom, I'm just going to I disagree with him making the jump this year.
No, I never said he should.
I know. I'm not saying disagree. I'm saying it'd be so much better for him and his development to just go win a national championship.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Go win a national championship, man. Go, you went to Michigan. You went to Michigan University.
What if Kent and Kent Johnson and Matty Beniers stick?
What do you mean? I mean, Beniers has made mention that he plans on going back.
Yeah, I'm just saying. My question was, if Beniers and Kent Johnson stick in the league, I think that it's going to be a lot tougher to win the national title when you take away two of the top forwards in college hockey.
Yeah, I mean, you still have Luke Hughes, who hasn't played a single game for Michigan yet either. He was
Fair point.
He hasn't played a single game for Michigan yet. I just think in terms of all four of those players' development, I understand it's a sexy option to go right into the NHL, sign your entry level deal, and be put in a situation, where you're living out your dream immediately. But barring injury, some catastrophic injury, knock on wood, stay in school. Finally go be a kid for one more year before you have to grow up real fast. And go to Michigan University, go to Yost. Have an unbelievable time, get the experience of that crowd and that atmosphere, and then really challenge, at least play in the Frozen Four tournament and know what that's like and know what that pressure is like. I think that does
get there.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Oh, that's what I'm saying. Know the pressures of having to get there. And, that brass ring was dangled in front of them this past season. It was taken away because of COVID. Those kids are hungry. They want to go win a national championship. Power has made that known. Like, he wants an opportunity to do that and just to have the college experience. And I don't blame him. He's still a kid. He's 19 years old.
I wanted to transfer to a topic. Don, did you have anything else on that?
No, I think you guys covered it well. I don't know too much about prospects. I don't follow it at all. I'm not going to pretend like I do, but after this year, I was ravaged by COVID. I feel like every prospect should just go back and get 1 year of normalcy.
Agreed.
Yeah, and Duane, you hit the nail on the head, and we talked about it more in the Owen Power episode. One of the other articles that you wrote, and I love it because me and Duane talked about this all the time. We are big offer sheet guys. We want to see the
I want an offer sheet.
Mm-hmm.
Why is so many GMs against that? Like, who cares? It should be some unwritten code. This is a business at the end of the day, and the business is making your team the best possible team to succeed as possible.
Partly that question to you. I've always thought that there's a good old boys club in the sense that they all go down in for the GM meetings. They all work together on trades. A lot of them have past histories or have worked together before. Is it a respect thing? Because we've seen a couple teams do it, and I think those two GMs just don't give a fuck. But are we going to see one? Before I get into your article, what is your thinking behind why these GMs don't offer sheet players? Is there an understanded agreement that you're not going to offer sheet a guy if you ever hope to make a trade with that GM again?
It does feel that way. I don't know the exact machinations of how they're thinking, but it does feel like they don't want to get burned themselves. And it's probably also a collusion thing where they don't want to blow up the RFA structure for everyone else, where these are guys who are always underpaid and you get their prime years for a bargain. And if you blow that up for one player, it might snowball and take out that market inefficiency for everyone. But I don't know how you see Braden Point as an RFA a couple of years ago and not give him $10 million because he would have been worth it. It's the 100%. Same with Elias Pettersson this year. You don't even have to give up 4 picks to probably make life hard for Vancouver because they right now are looking at doing a bridge deal for Pettersson and Hughes because they don't have cap space to make it work.
What would that bridge deal put them at? What would the price they'd need to pay?
I think it's something they're looking at something around like $7 million, something around the Braden Point contract. And if you,
I have it right in front of me. So $7 million puts you at 1 first, 1 second, 1 third. That's it?
Yeah, and
fucking sign me up in a heartbeat. Give me
that's what Vancouver is looking at, right? So that probably won't be enough to pry him out of Vancouver. They'll be like, thank you for this gift, sort of like the Sebastian Aho offer sheet. But if you put some pressure on them and go to $10 million, just under the 4 first-round pick compensation, they'll probably have a chance to actually get the player. And if you're a decent team, a 2 first, a second, and a third won't be as much value as Elias Pettersson will provide. You're probably not going to get a Pettersson with those picks.
Yeah, man, listen, I get why the draft is so important, but I think way too many fans overvalue draft picks.
Yeah.
To hear these people call into the radio and to even hear certain radio hosts, and I'm not going to name names because I like a few of them, certain people outside, even in the game, overvalued draft picks. Like, Dom, because you deal in analytics. You've seen the chart where it's like outside of the top 3 picks, the percentage that guy is going to play 100 or even 500 games is so low. It gets so much lower as we go. Duane, maybe we can post that at some point.
Yeah.
Because it's it was an eye opener for me. Because look at all I'm not even gonna go any further with that. It's a fascinating chart. Dom, you know what I'm referring to?
Yeah, and I've done my own chart that is based on game score that looks at the actual value of each pick in a way where you can sort of translate that to player value. And
where can our fans find that?
If you just Google draft pick value and then my name, it'll probably come up, but it'll show the value of each pick, and that is over a player's first 7 years. So then you can compare it to a player like Pettersson, who's worth 3 wins per year. Over 7 years, that's 21 wins. And in order to get that value from a first, a second, a third, you have to be one of the worst teams in the league every single year while those picks are active. And it's unlikely with Pettersson on your team. And obviously, if you're a team like Buffalo, it's a hard sell to obviously Pettersson.
Picks are going to be lottery.
Yeah.
Now let me make this clear. These aren't lottery protected picks. If you were to offer to the guy,
you're giving up the picks. That's why I think Buffalo would steer. I mean, I love the idea of Elias Pettersson in Buffalo because I think, not that I'm trying to fast track this rebuild, but like he's just a very dynamic elite goal scorer. No, I understand what you're saying, but like again, with those picks obviously not being lottery protected, you could be looking at Buffalo probably finishing near the bottom of the league at least next season. And you're giving up a chance at drafting in a draft where, potentially, I think, is it Shane Wright next year?
Yeah.
Shane Wright? Yeah. You're looking at a Shane Wright where, that could be a franchise-changing type of player. And, I hate playing the what-ifs game. What if you do this and you lose out, your pick ends up being a lottery winner? But at the same time, I think a guy like Shane Wright.
Elite player. Yeah.
But you're still also getting an elite player in Elias Pettersson.
That's my point. Now I wanted to play a fun game. Okay, so you and James Myrtle listed. I think it's 8 or is it 10?
8.
Okay, so
we had 10. The car got signed.
I'm going to list off the players, and we're going to go through and say the best fit for the Sabres. First one, we talked about Elias Pettersson. Right now, he's $10 million over 5 years. You talked about him signing a bridge deal because of Vancouver's cap space at around 7. Okay, and then I'll get his big deal. Up next, we have Adam Pelech, who was an absolute horse for the Islanders. For those that didn't watch, I thought he was in the top 5 defenders in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and you're looking at 2 of them were on the Montreal Canadiens, right? With Petrie and Weber. He's an undervalued player that I thought showed what he could do this year. Not only does he have that jam, he's fucking nasty. He's this generation Scott Stevens. We don't see the game has changed, right? You see a lot of the top defenders being the Cal McCarrs, the Luke Hughes, a lot of guys with offensive upside. I'm not saying Adam Pelech doesn't have that, but fuck, man, this guy's a nasty player to play against, and that's what I think. I as a head coach, I love that on the team. So we have Adam Pelech as number 2, okay, and right now he's on a 6.15. Does that put him in the same range as Pettersson? A first, a second, and a third?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no. 6.15 would put him in the class below.
Right. I did a lot of the things we designed the price to fit under certain thresholds. So if the threshold was 6.15, we put it exactly at that threshold.
Okay, so far we got Pelech, we got Pettersson. Next up, we have Andrei Svechnikov. He's at $8 million over 6 years. Next up, we have Alex Barboulay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I've never heard of him.
He's so basically Myrtle's idea was there's a few of these young guys on Tampa Bay where the idea is to give them like modest pay raises where the compensation is literally nothing. And if they match, you just go down the line. So you go Barboulay, then you go to Ross Colton, and then I think they have a third guy. You just keep hitting Tampa Bay until you get one of these guys.
I like that. And then, Yanni Gord and Barclay Goodrow are already gone.
Yeah.
And then you got David Svard, and wow, that's fascinating. I like that idea. Really, really well done. That next up, Kevin Fiala from the Minnesota Wild. He's at 6.15 times 5 years. And he's been, great with Minnesota. Obviously, I don't know if he can sustain that success. Hopefully he does. He's obviously got great numbers, analytics. What is this? Fiala has a 70-point upside in a bigger role. Can you explain that?
Well, he only plays around 16, 17 minutes a night for Minnesota. So if he were to get first-line minutes, you could reasonably expect that his point rate would increase and he can get to that 70-point area, maybe even 80 points. We saw a couple of years ago, as soon as he came to Minnesota, he had a bit of a slow start, but then second half of the season, he caught fire and he was one of the best players in the league for a short stretch. So he has that talent level where if he can just stay consistent, he can be one of the best goal scorers in the league.
So he wasn't playing with Kaprizov regularly, right?
No.
Okay, makes sense. This is my most interesting pick. Number 6, Ilya Sorokin, the goaltender for the Islanders, 4.1 over 3 years. Me and Duane, as goaltenders, have talked about the, one of the biggest needs. Even if we do sign Allmark, let's just say we don't sign Allmark, then this makes even more sense for me. He's a goaltender that he's proven that, he can play at this league and he can be a 1A, if not a 1B, if not a 1A guy. And I think, you look at his numbers, 22 regular season games, 918 save percentage, and a 274 goals against, the 16th, and that puts him right in the middle. But, that was on a pretty good Washington team this year. I think they won the President's Trophy, didn't they? They were close. They were up there until the very end. Next up, Igor Shesterkin. Is he the goaltender for the Rangers?
Yeah.
Yep. Shesterkin.
So, 6 and 7 make a ton of sense, for at least my opinion. Sorry. The last one, Connor Garland for the Vancouver Canucks, 5.5 over 4 years. And so going around, maybe I'll start with you, Dom. Well, me and Duane think about it. What makes the most sense for the Sabres here? If, let's just say, Allmark doesn't sign, or if he signs a 1-year deal, who would you go after if you were Kevin Adams?
I would go after whoever doesn't cost anything, and that would probably mean just do the Tampa route. I think the Sabres are way too far away from contention, especially if they're going to trade Jack Eichel, that this is just the start of a new rebuild, and I'd rather take some bets on guys like Barré-Boulet and Ross Colton for no compensation rather than give up a second or a first and a third for.
What about Shesterkin? He'd only cost you a second-round pick.
If you can get Shesterkin for a second-round pick, then absolutely. I just think that it might take a bit more to pry him out of New York.
So the process goes, we offer sheet them. They have the chance to match that plus go up.
That's the deal. So that's the deal that's signed, and they can either match or they can take the compensation.
Okay. So we would have to now. Let me ask you this: the annual average value in the compensation chart, is that off of his current deal, or is that off of the deal that we would offer him?
So in the article, we put the deal that we would offer the player. So I'm not sure. I don't remember what it was for Shesterkin, but for like Pettersson, for example, I think the offer was
4.1.
4.1.
4.1 over 3 years. No, that's
Yeah.
Sorokin.
Yeah.
Sorry, my bad.
I think for Shesterkin, I went closer to 6.
Yeah,
which would be a first and a third, if I recall correctly.
But like Sorokin for me at 4.1, that gives you're giving up a second round pick for a young guy that I know we have some guys in the pipeline that Duane likes, but hell, like he.
Well, That's another thing too, though, Cully. We just to get Devin Levi. You do have Portillo at Michigan, who we both have a lot of high hopes for, and UPL. I'm all for Sorokin, or Shesterkin if the price is right and the compensation is right. But I think for me, I would rather just develop, and I'm not disagreeing. I like that idea, but I would rather develop what we have right now and maybe find some stopgap guys to kind of fill those holes in until you have your pieces in place, and then what you already do have is ready to make the jump to the NHL. Because Devin Levi really impressed the World Junior Tournament. He, there's a lot of high hopes around him. Eric Portillo, we've had him on the show. I have a lot of high hopes for him, and there's always going to be some hype around Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. I don't hate the idea. If they said tomorrow that they offer Ilya Sorokin or Igor Shesterkin, I'm on board 100%. But
I think Shesterkin is like Dom said. I think he's too expensive because there's not a lot of protected picks, and you're giving up a first. I like the idea of Sorokin just because at your projection of 4.1, Dom, I'm willing to give up a second, right? And you're right. Devin Levi coming in helps, but he's going to be a sophomore, or he's going to be a sophomore.
This would have been his freshman year had it not been for COVID. But
right,
I think it's at Northwestern, maybe. I can't remember what college.
Like, let's just say he plays out at least his junior year, maybe gets his senior, what would be a senior year, right? He's then got a year in the AHL, right? Like, so he's far away. Like, I think so. That would be my only.
I'm not disagreeing with it, but I like Dom's idea of going the Tampa Bay route too, though. Like, those guys sound like you're not giving up anything, and they're low risk, high reward, right, Dom?
Yeah,
you imagine on a
that's
team
the
like
idea.
This, low risk, high reward.
Because
I love Ross Colton too.
Yeah, on Buffalo, you can give them top 6 minutes, see what they do, and you either got something or you wasted money, not picks. So I think that's the route I would go. I do like Sorokin. I think he has potential, but I think worst case, he is really good but not elite, and Buffalo lowers its chances of getting the number 1 pick next year. And I think ideally, when Buffalo is ready, that's when you look at an offer sheet for a goalie rather than right now when they're nowhere close.
Are we talking tank? Is that what you're talking? Are we talking tank 2.0?
Yes.
The tank is back with a vengeance. My God, man. And we didn't even lose it the first time. Yeah, we didn't get McDavid, but you got a phenomenal player with an Eichel. And unfortunately, only this franchise could find a way to screw that up. And, I'll say this, last question or two here, and then we'll end the episode. But two things. Well, this is not really much of a question, more just want your thought on it is, at this season's end, obviously you had the Eichel just dealing with nagging injuries from last season, obviously the neck injury, the ankle injury, the cracked ribs to start the season. The guy could not just catch a break, dealing with his injuries from last season, then what happened in training camp, and then throughout the season. I guess it's just against the thought is it really sucked because unlike some Sabres fans, I was actually optimistic when the season ended because you think you finally found your coach in Granato who really gets the best out of players. The most evidence pointing towards guys like Casey Middlestat and Rasmus Dahlin who finally came out of their shell. I felt like they were neutered under the system that Kruger was trying to implement, especially Dahlin. And then you had Sam. Granato was the only coach who put him at the position he was drafted at to play center, and he excelled. He played very well at center. And at this season's end, I'm looking at the big picture, and I'm seeing one of the biggest obstacles any team has when building a team and trying to sustain success is having that depth down the middle. It's hard to find. And I'm looking at this. I'm like, well, finally you have a coach who's willing to keep Sam Ryder at center. You have Jack Eichel. You have Dylan Cousins, and you have Casey Middlestat. Not saying that Casey's going to be your 4th-line center, but you have 2 guys who could interchange the 3rd-line centerman. And I'm just like, oh my God, finally! We finally figured it out. I've always felt it's easier to find goals when you have great to elite centers with average at wingers. I think Sidney Crosby's proven that time and time again. But figuring that out, and then exit interview day comes, and the shit just hits the fan. The Sabres break the hockey Twitter, and it was just like, oh my God, we are officially the Cleveland Browns of hockey. This is so bad. Like, it was so infuriating because I was so optimistic. I'm just like, they got the biggest thing figured out down the middle. They have it figured out, and then that day happened, and it was just like, oh my God, not again.
Welcome
not
to
again.
Sabres hell.
Yeah, I feel bad for you guys.
But
before you ask your last question, I got to head out of here. Dom, tip of the cap, couple clicks. Thanks for all you do. Hope to have you back on. Let you finish up the show, Duane, and I will see you guys. Thanks to all the fans for listening. And look forward. We have 2 big name guests coming up. Duane, I'll let you tease that. But thanks again, Dom.
Nice chatting with you.
I talk to you later, Cully. No, another thing too is it was just tweeted out by Lance Lyasowski, who's kind of like one of our beat reporters here in Buffalo, that the Sabres are extending their qualifying offers from RFAs. One of the biggest name in that grouping, which we really haven't gotten much detail on, but there's some stuff to speculate on because of the Makar deal. And before that, I think it was Heiskanen. Heiskanen assigned his. Where do you see a guy like Rasmus Dahlin with the metrics he showed last year? I think more specifically, you should more focus on what he was doing under Granato rather than Ralph Kruger, who should have never been a coach in the NHL to begin with. Where do you see him slotting in at? Do you see him bridge deal? Do you see them going long term? And what's your number if you were to make that decision?
I would bet on his talent and go long term.
I agree.
I think it's a bit scary because of him regressing a bit to start the year, and I think last year wasn't a great year either. But what he showed under Granato was promising. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I just know he looked a lot better, and it seemed like he was playing a lot better. So I would bet on that, and I don't think it'll cost as much as Heiskanen or Makar, and I think there's a chance he can still get to that elite level where he'll be well worth that price.
Now, what price tag would you actually put him at, do you think? Obviously, you're not looking at like a $9 million guy. You said, which Makar got, I think it was over 6 years, $9 million over 6.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the exact semantics of Heiskanen's deal, but I was thinking, if you can get I agree, bet on the player because you see the talent. You see how great of a puck-moving defenseman he is, how smart he is, how – he put and one of the things with Granato is he finally started to play with swagger again. He seemed confident. He came out of his shell. He wasn't afraid to make plays that he was making even in his rookie season or before that when he was playing in Frölunda. Like he's not afraid to take those attributes that got him to this point and just ran with it. It was like finally letting the horse out of the barn. It's like, hey, just run. And that's what I felt like under Granato is you got those best offensive attributes out of Dahlin. And I agree. I feel like, if you offer the long-term deal now, it's going to look like even better down the road for the price tag you get him at.
Yeah, for sure. I think Evolving Hockey has him at an average deal of $5.5 million over 5 or 6 years. And I think if you can get him at that for 6 years, I think you sign that for sure. And if it takes going to 6 to get the 7th or 8th year, I think it's worth it. There's probably some risk if you get to 7 or 8 million, but I don't think it would take that.
I think if it came down, push came to shove between 6.5 to 7, I think if you sign that guy at $7 million a year in 3 years, it'll be worth it. He's such a smart kid. And it's one of the things too is I kind of met his family after he was drafted. He comes from a really good family, and he's got a good head on his shoulders. He's some of the stories we used to hear downtown, from seeing some of the players downtown over the last couple of years is while some of the guys are at the bar doing their own thing, Dahlin's over drinking orange juice. He's he's very responsible. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He knows why he's here. He wants to succeed. He wants to win. He just, I like his demeanor and just the person he's developing into even off the ice. I think I see him wearing a letter someday even.
Yeah, for sure.
And before we let you go, obviously, one of the biggest topics in the NHL right now is Jack Eichel. There was a lot of speculation surrounding, Minnesota for a good 48 hours, and everybody was throwing out, their potential trade offers, rumored Boldy, Rossi, Greenway, Fiala was in there taking on Dumba's contract, and then the Rangers coming in with their comical offers. And, you see it on Twitter. And I personally, I get it that, Capo Caco is a good, progressing to be a very good 200-foot hockey player from the metric standpoint. I just don't understand how Rangers fans could think a guy with 40 points in nearly almost 120 games is untouchable.
Yeah, I don't see him being untouchable, especially for a player of Eichel's caliber. I feel like that should have been the starting point, because even Buffalo's taking risk taking on Kako based on his first 2 seasons. You're not getting Buffalo's taking the risk because they're not getting a player like Eichel back, and the firsts that New York will give back probably won't be very high picks.
Yep.
So they got to get someone like Kako back to make up ground, and you see what Seth Jones goes for. I think Columbus did really well there.
Very well.
I can't imagine why Buffalo should take less than that.
I agree. I get the injury plays into it, but he is skating. He is training on his own. There's a lot of positive things pointing in the direction of him being ready to play next season. And you know what you're getting. Not last season, but the season before that, when he was on that 18-game heater, he was the best player in the world in that moment in time. There was nobody better, not even McDavid, just the way Jack was playing and putting this team on his back. And that's just the way it's been. And frustration builds, man. We saw Ryan O'Reilly. Frustration builds when you're consistently losing, but you go out there and skating your balls off. And it's just, when the results aren't there, frustration starts to mount and build. And you're seeing it right now in this offseason. Guys they want to leave. Money isn't really a thing anymore. It's about wanting to go somewhere and win. I get it, man. Being a former hockey player myself, Cully gets it too. It's just like you want to go somewhere and win. It's not always just about the dollars and cents. It's about wanting to give yourself a chance to play in the playoffs. Yeah. And I like the I was always on board with a deal with Anaheim. I like what they have in their system in Drysdale and Zegras. Of course, you keep hearing that both those guys are off the table, which again I don't understand, because you would hope that a Zegras would be an Eichel. He's not an Eichel though. He's not.
He's not.
You're not. But I like those. So I feel like the best fit in an Eichel trade might be Minnesota.
Yeah. I'm not sure what Eichel is after here, because he's not going to go to a contender either. I think it'd be nice to play with Kaprizov in Minnesota, but in 2 years when they have $70 bajillion in dead cap space from buying out Suter and Parise, I just don't know what's going to happen there.
Do you see him on this team next season?
Probably not, but I mean, the team is better with him on it, and I think it's never too late. I'm a Packers fan, and apparently Aaron Rodgers is coming back, but it's hard when Sam Reinhart gets traded and you look around the forward depth and it's just very bleak.
Well, yeah, look at everybody that's been traded away over the last couple of years, going back to Evander Kane, Ryan O'Reilly, now Sam Reinhart. You traded away all his buddies. It's like just him now. It's I never got on board with some of the criticism he got that he wasn't a leader. You go out there and skate your balls off game at night and night out and constantly lose, and you're giving a maximum effort, and the result is always the same. And tell me how you're going to feel. Same way Ryan O'Reilly did. You went and put him on a team that was ready to win and knew how to build, knew how to draft, knew how to develop. And wow, the very next season, Ryan O'Reilly's lifting a Stanley Cup and winning the Conn Smythe. And we're all here wanting to walk off a cliff in Buffalo.
Yeah, sadly.
Absolutely. But Dom, I do appreciate you coming on with us, man. Hope we didn't talk your ear off too much. I do appreciate it. Good luck in the off season. I know you got a lot of work ahead of you. And enjoy some of the. Where are you stationed at? Where?
I'm in Toronto.
Oh, you are in Toronto. Okay.
Yes.
So you have some pretty nice weather right now, I think, right?
A little too hot right now.
A little too hot. Yeah. I went golfing this morning. It was 85, and I was ready to die.
Yeah.
I was golfing with a buddy though who's from Louisiana, and we're walking on the course, and he's wearing a hoodie. I'm like, "Are you out of your mind?" He goes, "Oh, this is cold for me, man. My heat index is 120 in Louisiana."
Oh my god, that's
I could never.
Crazy.
I need I need seasons. I need fall. I don't hate winter. I need seasons. I could never deal with that kind of heat. I'd be inside all day.
Yeah, I am inside all day.
Inside all day. So,
Mm-hmm.
but thanks again, Dom. Appreciate it. I'm glad we were finally able to get this done. And, hopefully we can have you again sometime in the future.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem, buddy. This has been episode 70 of Two Goalies, One Mic. This is